Thanks for downloading the Racing Postcast. Listen online and on mobile.
Welcome to a special Racing Post podcast looking at pedigrees of next week's Derby candidates. I'm Martin Stevens, bloodstock editor here at the Racing Post. I've got here in the studio with me James Thomas, my colleague on the bloodstock desk, and Tom Pritchard Gordon of Badgers Bloodstock, who's come down from Newmarket. A bit of background on Tom. His agency has bought the likes of Irish Oaks winner Chiquita and international Group 1 winners Miss Finland and Morla Kana. So, Tom, James, are you going to the Derby next week?
I am indeed, yes.
Good, for work or for social?
Just for pleasure.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll make you write a few lines on it, don't worry. Tom, are you going?
No, I think I'll be watching it on TV. I much prefer to see these big races on TV unless I've got an interest myself. So.
No, I completely agree. I like to see where all the horses are finished and know what to write about in all the news lines. So I'll be watching it on Channel 4 too. The first horse we're going to talk about is US Army Ranger, who is by Galileo and out of the Irish Oaks winner Moonstone. That's a horse I know you, Tom, would know a lot about because I think you were underbidder on Moonstone at the sales. So looking at US Army Ranger's pedigree, he's by Galileo and Moonstone has already produced Nevis, Stubbs and Words. They were all very good horses, all won black type races, but none of them were of Derby winning level. What's to say that US Army Ranger is going to make it through at the Group 1 level?
I wish we weren't underbid. I wish we'd bought Moonstone. And also, I mean, if you've got a mare like Moonstone, her first four progeny have all been stakesmen. She's had a phenomenal start to her career. So you can't be knocking her on that regard. I believe that US Army Ranger is able and capable to step up to Group 1. I know neither of his three siblings have actually stepped up to the Group 1 level. I mean, Nevis, they've all been stakes winners, and I believe one of them was a group winner. But none of them were by Galileo, and that while one was by Daniel Dancer and one was by Dan Silly, I believe that they are a slight step down on Galileo, who is the best sire I think I've ever seen in my whole entire lifetime, and probably the best sire there's ever been.
And what makes Galileo the best sire that's ever been?
What makes him the best sire has ever been his as well-bred a horse as there is. He was a phenomenal racehorse. He is an outstanding individual, and he seems to throw all of that on his stock. You know, his stock are outstanding individuals. They try hard, and they've got a bit of class, and they're able to run over a variety of distances. So
the fact that he was a Derby winner who was beaten by Fantastic Light in the Irish Champion Stakes, and I think people after that race thought, he's a 1 mile 4 furlong horse. He's obviously out of Urban Sea, the Arc winner. The fact that he gets these precocious 2-year-olds is astonishing, isn't it?
It totally is. I mean, he's an anomaly. There's very few sires out there who are able to get multiple Derby winners and also countless group winners as 2-year-olds. I mean, the number of champion 2-year-old winners he's had already is quite phenomenal. And I don't think we'll see a sire like him ever again.
The only other thing I'd say about US Army Ranger is he's by Galileo. He's out of a Dalakani mare. Dalakani is usually a conduit for middle distance or stamina, pun intended. James, Galileo over Dalakani mare, was that too slow for the Derby?
On paper, I can see why you would say that, but I mean, the horse has won around Chester, which is obviously a track that favours horses with a bit of speed, and that didn't seem to be too much of a problem to him. Moonstone's progeny, admittedly, was by horses possibly less of a stamina influence than Galileo, but they have won over 7 furlongs, unless I think Stubbs won over 5 furlongs as well. So no, I think if anything, the stamina's assured with him, which is not with all of them. I wouldn't be worried about him being too slow. I think if he gets beaten, it's not going to be because he's not quick enough.
Mm-hmm, of course, yeah. So going on to the next horse, Wings of Desire, the Dante winner, by Pivotal. Now, Pivotal won the Nunthorpe Stakes over 5 furlongs, so why on earth should we think that he is going to get a Derby winner?
I mean, he's a proven track record at Epsom with his fillies. I mean, he's had Sariska, who's related to this, or closely related to this horse, is an Oaks winner, and while he's had also the Lark and I believe one other have been placed in the Oaks. And purely on this pedigree alone, he's got a King Edward VII winner, he's got an Oaks winner, and he's got a Park Hill winner, all under the first 2 dams. So, I mean, I really don't believe that stamina is going to be an issue for this horse. I believe the only issue that he's going to have if he's not good enough is in his inexperience.
Yeah, sure. And Pivotal was also the damn side of Main Sequence, who was second a few years ago, of course. James, is this a Derby winner's pedigree?
I see no reason why it can't be. Obviously, there's a list of Epsom success when you go back to the family. You look at the likes of Sariska, the Dam Gullwing. She's got plenty of stamina coming from her side of things. Pivotal, an outstanding sire, who seem to be able to throw horses that are capable of winning over sprint trips and longer distances, particularly the case with this family. So yeah, I see no reason why he can't go and win the Derby. There's certainly nothing in his pedigree holding him back.
Now, this mare Gullwing, who won the Further Flight Stakes at Nottingham, she's been sent back to Pivotal 4 times out of about 7 matings. It was an obvious mating after Sariska won the Oaks. Tom, you must deal with mating plans for people. Would you recommend going back to the same sire that often?
Well, it's obviously worked. It's worked incredibly well for Lady Bamford. I mean, Gullwing's produced the Lark and Eagle Top, and they're both incredibly good racehorses. And Wings of Desire looks like it's going to be even better than those two. So, I mean, if it works, then keep on repeating it.
Of course, yeah. So we'll be coming back and looking at Cloth of Stars next.
Read the Racing Post newspaper for the hottest coverage of this summer's racing. Available from all good newsagents on iPad and as a digital paper at racingpost.com.
So Cloth of Stars, who's by the 2009 Derby winner See the Stars. See the Stars made a really good impact with his first 3-year-olds 2 years ago. He gets a really high ratio of stakes winners and group winners, not all necessarily who strike at Group 1 level. I think he's still waiting for his next Group 1 winner after Tagruda won the Oaks a few years ago. What do we make of the start that See the Stars made at Stud, Tom?
He's made an incredibly good start. I mean, he's had, as you said, 3 Group 1 winners. I think he's sired over 40 stakes performers, including 14 group winners. He's done incredibly well. He probably hasn't done quite as well as his half brother in Galileo, but he's obviously got some way to go to reach his level. But no, he's had a very, very promising start. He looks like he's got 4 very high class 3-year-olds this year in Cloth of Stars, Hazard, Choreographer, and That Horse in France. So no, he's had a great start, and hopefully he'll continue.
Sure. And out of the King Mambo mare, King Mambo was a top miler. King Mambo and the Epsom Classics, what do we think, James?
For me, I'm not 100% convinced. I think there's other pedigrees in here that have more compelling sort of claims.
I have to disagree on that, I'm afraid. Yeah, I think King Mambo's been outstanding when it comes to the classics. I mean, he's I think 3 of the last 4 Derby winners have had King Mambo in the dams under the dam side. Rule of the World and Camelot, obviously, out of King Mambo mares, and I believe that Golden Horn's out of Dubai Destination Mare, who's a son of King Mambo. So,
and Workforce, of course, by King's Best, another son of King Mambo. I mean, if nothing else, King Mambo is, of course, famously out of Miesque, the Great Miesque, and I think those bloodlines just can't be any hurt at all in a pedigree, can they?
No, absolutely. I mean, Miesque and Mr. Prospect there. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the amazing thing is this year, I think King Mambo has 3 of the top horses in the betting. His broodmare, so 3 of the top horses in the betting, and Cloth of Stars, Ulysses, who's closely related, and also Port Douglas as well.
So Cloth of Stars in his pedigree has Urban Sea and Miesque, probably the 2 preeminent broodmares of the last 30 years. Cloth of Stars is out of Strawberry Fledge, who wasn't any great shakes herself, but is beautifully bred as a sister to the Henry Cecil's Oaks winner Light Shift, and Light Shift actually appears, funnily enough, as the dam of the next horse we're going to talk about, Ulysses. He's very high up in the betting for a Newbury Maiden winner, James. Can he win the Derby just after that?
From a pedigree point of view, he's by an Oaks winner. He's out of an Oaks winner. He's by Galileo, so there's nothing stopping on his page. Whilst he does seem a very short price for a horse who's only won a maiden, the form of his first 2 starts couldn't really be working out much stronger. But he's beaten by Algometer on debut, who I believe has gone on and won a listed race at Goodwood since. He was beaten next time up by Imperial Aviator, who I believe Roger Charlton's now considering for the French Derby. So yeah, I think he's definitely a live contender.
Light Shift was by King Mambo, though, who you can't have. So. Tom, what do you think of Ulysses' pedigree?
It's an absolutely amazing pedigree. I mean, as you say, Galileo over Light Shift is as good as it gets, and if he was to win the Derby, then he's got the pedigree to do so. And it would be very fitting, I suppose, with Light Shift being Sir Henry's first classic winner in 7 years or so. It would be great if Sir Michael was to get another Derby winner after not having one since Workforce. I don't think he's had a classic winner since Workforce. So
Right, yeah.
it'd be very fitting that the two of the three Sirs in racing would be able to combine with this horse.
Yeah. And of course, Ulysses and Cloth of Stars share an awful lot of the same ancestors. And it's funny this year, the Derby, there's so many links between all the horses from a pedigree perspective. The next horse we're going to talk about is Moonlight Magic, by Cape Cross, sire of See the Stars, sire of Ouija Board, the Oaks winner, who of course produced Derby winner in Australia. Cape Cross also a sire of last year's winner Golden Horn. Moonlight Magic is out of Malika, who was placed in the Oaks. Malika was by Lamtara, the 1995 Derby winner. Malika is a half-sister to See the Stars and Galileo, two other Derby winners. This pedigree is precision engineered for the Derby, isn't it, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Everything about this pedigree, or everything about this horse, suggests that he should be running in the Derby. I mean, all those names you mentioned. I mean, he's trained by Jim Bolger, who's had great success in the Derby. I think the only connection that hasn't had Derby success is Godolphin. But it's quite phenomenal the amount of different horses in this horse's pedigree that have had success at Epsom, and hopefully all the stars will align for him to have a good chance.
So he's got the pedigree, James. From what you've seen, do you think he can go through and win it?
I see no reason why not. I mean, at the back end of last year, I think he was pretty high up on people's lists. He disappointed behind Harzand on reappearance, and then he seemed to sort of dented his profile ever so slightly. He made amends for that, defeating No Uncertain Terms last time when he finished ahead of Shogun in a Group 3 at Leopardstown. And I imagine it's all systems go for Epsom now, so yeah. And if you were betting purely on a pedigree point of view, I think this horse would probably have to be top of the list, wouldn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've been mostly positive about most of the pedigrees of the Derby runners so far. We're going to move on to Massart now, though, who has much more of a question mark over him. He's by Teofilo. Of course, we'll never know what distance Teofilo would have flourished over at 3 because he was never managed to race beyond that because of injury. But Teofilo is by Galileo, of course. But Massart is out of a dam by Acclamation. Acclamation is well known for speed and precocity. And there's loads and loads of sprinters in this family. Tom, surely this one can't stay.
Personally, I can't have it myself. No, I'd be very surprised if he does stay. I feel there's nothing worse than being a horse who runs second or third in 2,000 guineas who stays on strongly, because you always have that niggling question whether you should be running the Derby or not. And I mean, fair play to the connections. They are going to run this horse, and I might get egg on my face and the horse might go and win. But if you're looking purely on a pedigree perspective, I can't see it myself. As you say, I mean, he's out of an Acclamation mare who won over 6 furlongs as a 2-year-old, and she disappointed her only start over further. And she's a half sister to a 5 furlong Group 3 winner. And while you've got Scottish in the family there under the second dam, I see that Godolphin dropped him back to 10 furlongs here on his first start as a 4-year-old. So I'd be very surprised if he does stay, but
Scottish really is the only glimmer of hope in the pedigree, isn't he? Because he's by Teofilo, and as you say, in the pedigree there close up, so very closely related, and he's really what you're hoping for. James, Massart, are you going to tell us different, or?
No, I'm going to be very polite and agree with everything Tom said there, really. I don't think on pedigree there's much hope of him staying the trip. 10 furlongs possibly, 12 furlongs, not for me, given how much speed in his pedigree out of an Acclamation mare. And he was staying on behind Galileo Gold and the Guineas, who isn't going for the Derby. And, you know, was there a sort of a slight visual sort of misleading element to the way he was finishing the Guineas, that, you know, he was staying on behind a horse who's effectively a miler, is going to be campaigned at a mile for the rest of the year, according to connections. no, not for me.
I suppose to be kind to him, I'd say this year's Derby has the feel of it to me a bit of Sir Percy's Derby in 2006. It's so open. And Sir Percy had also finished second in the 2000 Guineas, but probably clutching at straws there because Sir Percy was, I think, out of a Blakeney mare. So not for us, Massart, but good luck to Connections. Moving on to the final horse we're going to talk about in the upper echelons of the betting for the Derby. Deauville, another for Galileo. This one out of Walk Like an Egyptian, the mare by Danehill on that golden Galileo Danehill cross. James, what can you tell us about Deauville?
Well, excuse me, he's a brother to the Corsican, who of course won the Dubai Duty Free Arc Trial at Newbury Group 3. That was over 1 mile 3 furlongs. The way he ran in the Dante suggests that the trip should be well within his compass. From a pedigree point of view, he has a chance, but he would have to reverse form with Wings of Desire, and I don't see any real reason why he should on pedigree or form or anything else you may want to take into consideration, really.
So probably okay from a pedigree perspective, but Tom, does he excite you from a form angle?
Your only glimmer of hope with him is the fact that it was his first up run of the year, and obviously Wings of Desire had a couple of runs under his belt. Aidan doesn't tend to have his horses 100% fit first up. That will give you a glimmer of hope. But saying that, I'd say that Wings of Desire has a slightly better chance on pedigree to see out at 2,400 metres. I'm not saying that Deauville won't, but the Corsican is probably more a 10 furlong horse than he is a 2,400 metre horse. So I'd be on Wings of Desire's side than over Deauville at the moment.
Sure. So Tom, James, let's nail our colours to the mast and pick one horse on pedigree alone who you'd be backing for at Epsom next week. Tom first.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go over the favourite, and I'd say that US Army Ranger would, on pedigree alone, would excite me the most. I mean, his dam has already produced 3 stakes winners. He's by the very best in Galileo. He's out of a Oaks placed horse who went on to win the Irish Oaks. I mean, you don't get much better than that.
And James?
I think from a pedigree point of view, purely, I'd side with Moonlight Magic, who, as we've mentioned, given that See the Stars and Galileo further back in his pedigree, he'd be really continuing the family line there of Epsom success.
Yeah, I will go for Cloth of Stars. I'd love to see the Stars get a Group 1 winner. I like the form similarities he bears to Pour Moi, who won a few years ago. I know Andre Fabre says they're different types of horses. So we're going for, we can tell you that either a Galileo, a See the Stars or a Cape Cross will win, which if you perm all of those horses in the Derby, you'll be forking out. But that looks like the way it's going this year.
Read the Racing Post newspaper for the hottest coverage of this summer's racing. Available from all good newsagents on iPad and as a digital paper at racingpost.com.
Welcome back. We're now just going to each pick a horse in the Oaks who we think might have a chance. I mean, do you think that pedigree is quite as important in the Oaks as it is in the Derby, Tom? Because usually it's a real blue blood who wins the Derby, and with no disrespect to some of the winners of the Oaks, you can probably get away sometimes without having quite the rock solid pedigree. Is that fair to say?
I'd disagree. I mean, there's plenty of incredibly well-bred fillies that have gone on to win the Oaks, and there's always plenty of very well-bred fillies running in the Oaks. I mean, fillies that are bred to run in the Oaks tend to run in them because people think that on pedigree they've got a chance. And I think this year is, while the Oaks, the pedigrees of the fillies in the Oaks aren't as good as the pedigrees of the Colts in the Derby, I think the Derby pedigrees this year is the best it's ever been. I mean, it's quite frightening how many well-bred horses are there that are going to be lining up on a week on Saturday. The likes of Moonstone herself and Lightshift have both got runners in the Derby this year. They're both Oaks winners or Oaks runners, and they've got outstanding pedigrees. So no, I'd disagree with you on that one, I'm afraid.
No, I'd take that point. And even further down in the Derby betting, I think mares like Remember When have got
absolutely. I mean, whilst she never won a race, she was placed in the Oaks, and she's a beautifully bred. I think she's a sister to Dylan Thomas, a beautifully bred filly herself. So
No, point taken. I suppose also, I was also thinking maybe I just wonder sometimes whether you can get away with not staying quite so dourly in the Oaks. I remember Johnny Murtagh on BBC Racing a few years ago saying that I think one of the presenters must have asked him, was his filly bred to stay? And he said, well, if you're bred to stay the Oaks, you're probably too slow for the Oaks. And then he went and promptly won the Oaks on Dancing Rain, who's by Danehill Dancer, a sprinter, Out of a Mare by Indian Ridge, another sprinter. So I always keep that in mind with the Oaks. So, but if you're going to pick an Oaks candidate on pedigree, who would we go for, Tom?
Well, with that in mind, I mean, I'm afraid I'm going to hark back to Galileo, but and also the favourite. But I mean, Minding has the pedigree to excel in the Oaks. If you're going to, you've got the stamina of the Galileo side, and you've got Lily Langtry, who was an outstanding miler, and obviously they've imparted a fair amount of ability into Minding. She looks a class apart, and while it's a pedigree that it isn't stacked full of middle distance horses, I wouldn't be surprised if she has the class to stay 2,400 metres.
Sure. And James, do you have an Oaks pedigree for us to look out for?
The one I'm interested in is Ballydoyle. Again, by Galileo. You talked about how the Derby possibly has a deeper raft of pedigrees in it. The one comparison you can draw is that Galileo definitely has a stranglehold over the runners in this year's Oaks as well. The way she's shaped in the Guineas behind Minding suggested to me that she's the sort of horse who could, go on and excel over 12 furlongs. One of the issues I suppose you have with her is that Misty, for me, her full sister ran in the Oaks and appeared not to stay, but
I think another full sister, 12, was pretty soundly beaten in the Oaks as well, wasn't she? That's not to say that this one won't win, but it would be third time lucky for the dam in the Oaks, I think, with Ballydoyle.
Absolutely, and it's a very, very speedy pedigree. I mean, you've got Fazlieff under the second dam. I mean, it's all speed, and while I wouldn't be surprised if she does stay a mile and a half, the pedigree suggests that she might be best over 10 furlongs or shorter.
I'm going to give a shout for Turret Rocks, really just because I like the quirk that she's by Fastnet Rock and out of a Galileo mare, which is exactly the same formula as last year's winner Qualify, and she's also from a very nice family of Goldacova going back. And Tom told me before the recording that she's an absolutely stunning looking filly. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, she's beautiful. When we saw her in the 1,000 Guineas paddock, she was an absolute pick. She's the most beautiful looking filly, and she looks the kind of filly who would excel over further than a mile that she was running over that day.
Yeah. So I think that's the Derby and Oaks sorted. I think it all boils down to back a Galileo, and if you can't back a Galileo, back a Cape Crosser or See the Stars.
Thanks for downloading the Racing Postcast. Listen online and on mobile.